In what way was the wrath of God poured out on Jesus? What way? Well, he didn't beat up Jesus to take the sin out, to take out his aggression on sinners on Jesus. I don't think that's true. But what exactly is the wrath of God? Well, somebody said that I think if you're not penal substitution, I don't think it's a bad word. I don't think it's a bad word. Unless someone says he must have hated Jesus to sacrifice him. Well, I like the language of offering, but I mean, to me, that is still a sacrifice. He laid down his life, but it wasn't like God took out his aggression on Jesus. But so I believe that in some sense, Jesus bore the sins of humanity and then transferred them to the most holy place in heaven. And then they stay there, and then we're in the antitypical Day of Atonement. And then when Jesus comes back, he judges the Antichrist who's doing the working of Satan. And then sin is sent away from God's creation to the wilderness for 1,000 years. And at the end of that, God destroys it as the new Jerusalem comes down out of heaven with the saints in it who went to heaven at the first coming of Jesus. And that's why when Jesus comes, the fate of all humans is decided. And that's clear from Revelation 13:8, because everyone who's died, their fate is sealed. And everyone who's alive on the earth worships the beast unless their names are found written in the book of life. That's everybody. If you've died, and then people say something like, what about the little African kid who's got flies crawling on his eyeballs and a bloated stomach who never got a chance? He's saved. That's what happens. God can judge people according to the light that they have in this life. So everyone who's lived or died, their fates are sealed. God doesn't need to find anything out. They're just innocent, or they're judged and then purged. Not in purgatory, but I mean, however that works. And so we don't need a millennium with people getting a second chance. God can judge people with the light that they have, is my opinion, because it just says that it was appointed once for man to die, and after that, the judgment. Jesus will come a second time for those who are waiting for him. Jesus says he was guilty and unjust, let him be unjust still. And behold, I'm coming swiftly, and my reward is with me to give to every man according to his work. That's everybody. So look, man, some people just need the millennium to happen on the earth. It's just not going to happen. This doesn't teach that. You have to be ready when Jesus comes. If you're not, it's too late. God, that's why there's a culmination to history. And so, yes, so Jesus sends Satan into the wilderness, which is the earth with nobody alive on it. That's the wilderness. And the saints are taken to the marriage supper of the Lamb in heaven, whatever that means, not on the earth. And they see the judgments of God. That's what they're ruling and reigning. They're with Christ in heaven in the New Jerusalem, looking at the book. The books are open. They see why so-and-so isn't saved. And when they come back, God raises all the wicked who are died through history and died at Jesus' second coming. Satan gathers them and they attack the holy city, and that's where God takes them out. When the fire comes down from heaven, that's what Revelation 20 says. That's what I see happening. It makes sense to me. It makes sense of the typology of the scapegoat. But this question about Jesus, so the wrath of God, it's like, look, the Son became a human and actually died. He suffered a death, a real human death. I think that means Jesus was actually dead for 3 days. What does that mean? It means the person who is the eternal Son of God was not conscious for 3 days. or whatever, how long that was, 52 hours or whatever it was, or however it was, but he wasn't alive. But he didn't cease to exist any more than he ceased to exist when he was four dividing cells in the womb of Mary. Where was the Trinity when Jesus was four dividing cells in the womb of Mary, incapable of human cognition? I'll tell you where he was. He was in those four cells. That's where he was. So where was Jesus when he was dead for 3 days? Well, he was dead, but his body didn't see corruption. His body was in the tomb. That was God dead right there, quote unquote, God dead. The person who is God was dead, but he didn't cease to exist. His body was sitting in the tomb. And then he came back to life and never to die again, ever, in the presence of the Father, where it dwelt, where no one can approach. The risen God-man, who alone has immortality. Alone. What part of that do people get? The risen kinsman redeemer who overcame the grave, who was dead for 3 days, and is alive forevermore and has the keys to Hades, our forerunner, who can't ever die again, that man alone has immortality. What part of that don't you get? Jesus really died. He died. So that's the wrath he suffered. The eternal Son suffering the death of a human on the cross in full communion with his Father as a human being who is God. Suddenly, the lights dimmed. That's why he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Because the eternal God in human form suffered a death of a human being. And he really meant what he said but was he forsaken? No, because the psalm goes on. He did not forsake him ultimately. But you better believe the eternal God, man, losing the light of life in some way, somehow, suffered a real human death. And that must have felt like forsaken. He really felt what he said. But ultimately, he was not forsaken because he was worthy. Of course, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. I think he really felt forsaken. He really experienced the losing connection with the Father, because that's what happens when you die. The source of the unborrowed, underived source of life suffered a real human death for us. And now he's alive forevermore. Amen.